Avalanche, devils, hurricanes here in Puckberg. Rangers, Bruins, Maple Leafs, it's a Puckberg. The goal of many is that cup of Stanley. PuckTales, woo! PuckTales, woo! Here in Puckberg.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Here in Puckberg, your place for the daring, do bad, and good puck tales. I am your host, Shaggy Von Doom, otherwise known as Kyle Sullivan, with another episode of Puck Tales.
Woo!
And the you-know-who at the other end of the woohoo is none other than our really good friend, Adrian, otherwise known as Guffy Chan. It's all over the socials, and we're going to get to why you know of Guffy Chan here in just a minute. But first of all, how are you doing tonight?
I am good. Just finished up some work, hanging out, and just getting ready to enjoy a Friday off, which is nice and hopefully relaxing.
And at the time of this recording, it's no secret to anyone that follow either one of us. We're big Nazem Kadri stans, and at time of this recording, there has still been no word where Naz is going. So, who knows when this episode releases what jersey he's going to be wearing? But we're going to be talking about the 2022 season, especially. I know it was real big for Naz and real big for you. But before we get to that, how in the world did you get into the game of hockey in the first place?
Yeah. So I kind of have like an interesting story that I grew up an Air Force brat. I was born in Colorado. My mom's from Colorado as well. And I would kind of come home for the summers. Mom was kind of dragged along on all their adventures when they would go to old Colorado Rockies games. So everyone in the family always liked hockey. And the only exposure I ever got to it was like just being taken to like training camp at Family Sports back when it was like original Family Sports, that it was like a full game arcade inside, and like my uncle would just dump us there, and then like he would go watch, so we'd be like, arguing over who got tickets and all this. And like, probably as a young kid I met several players on these like golden age teams that I just have no recollection of. And then we kind of traveled all over the world. We were in Japan for a while, so like baseball was something I was always exposed to. And then we ended up getting, my dad got a job in DC area with the Pentagon. So we started going to like a lot of Caps games. Like I vividly remember like my first time, I think, actually seeing the Avs, where I was like old enough to remember and recall it. Like Foote was still the captain. And I was just like, oh my God, like I was enamored by, Adam, and like it was my mom's favorite player. So it was kind of like this cute thing where I was like, oh my God, like that's Adam Foote. And like, and then, so I kind of grew up, like I grew up an Avs fan. I would see them play when they would come into, DC. We'd always go to the Avs game, but I went to a lot of Caps games. So that was kind of always like my second background team that I've always kind of cheered for and wished good for. And then my dad retired from the Air Force a little bit down the road. And at that time, like I'd previously been at college out in LA. So I'd gone to Ducks games, King games. They came back to Mississippi. We did some like minor league hockey in the South, which is a whole nother experience. If you've never been to minor league hockey first and then going in the South. And then my parents said, we're going to go back to Colorado. Like, what's your plan? I was like a year away from graduating from my master's. And I was like, well, I'll just come back too. Like, I've never gotten to really live in Colorado. And I think like whenever we came back, my mom and I were like, okay, we like finally can go to a game at like, Pepsi Center at the time. And so that was part of it. And then as we kind of got settled back in, my mom had been in a car accident prior, and like that car accident did like a lot of internal damage that a lot of people couldn't really see. And so hockey kind of became a therapeutic thing for her just to be able to come take her mind off some of the pain that she was going through. Really impressively, like trying not to get on, hardcore pain medicine or anything like that. So internalizing a lot of that struggle, hockey became like a way for her to externalize it. And then it just became like a stronger point for the two of us to really like bond and enjoy something together that I knew like took her mind off of what she was going through. Whether it was a day at the doctor's or, having a doctor's appointment on the calendar that she knew, okay, I'm going to a hockey game now and then I'll relax and kind of go do all this stuff later. So that's when I think it kind of became like a big part of my life, was like when that intersection happened of it becoming like a mother-daughter thing that meant a lot more to her, which then meant a lot more to me in turn.
Yeah. Wow. And it's funny you mentioned like minor league hockey in the South. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. So the Birmingham Bulls, yeah.
Yeah, we
Uh,
went to I forget that it was the team like outside of Memphis. It was like the like they had
uh,
such a weird name.
yeah,
It's literally like Mud River something, and like
yeah.
we were like watching like one of the first ones we went to because we were like, all right, we're gonna go a bunch. Like we want to go up and see this. Like we're watching warm-ups, and these two guys are like just jawing at each other. We're like, oh great. And I think they started fighting during warm-ups. Like someone had to come out and separate them. And then like the minute puck dropped, like the two of them were gloves down right away. And we're like, okay, like, and I think it took about like 20 minutes just to get like everything back to normal. Everyone's separated. And then it kept happening. And we're like, all right, like you're not really at a hockey game at that point. You're just at like WWE meets hockey. Like,
I think that's the Peoria City Rivermen, I think is what they were. It's yeah, I know I was like at the Bulls all the time because like that was my only outlet for hockey. Like I would go in my Avs stuff just to see if there were other Avs fans there. I know what you're talking about with like the throwdowns, and it was comical at times, like full line brawls, and you're just like, okay, I guess this is the nature of the game. I
yep.
think I think our goalie, Austin Lotz, I think he made it up to like the Blues backup goalie, but like you you're not seeing
Yeah,
the
you
show.
don't see these guys really get that far. Like, they have like day jobs and then they're just like rolling to the rink, like even more annoyed because they had to work and then now they're
Yeah.
playing. So yeah, it's definitely a different breed of hockey.
Yeah, if you haven't experienced it, I would definitely try it once.
I agree.
Once, and then go from there. Because like, there's good aspects, especially, like, if you're local, like, you don't really the Thrashers aren't there anymore, and, I mean, just between us, who's going to a Predators game? But, like, you wanna enjoy some hockey, so it's a $20 ticket to get up to the glass, like, enjoy the game. But, yeah, I totally get that, and especially, I love the fact that, like, hockey was something like, even going to Japan and being introduced to baseball over there and still sticking with hockey because I know I have a brother in the Air Force as well, and my father also served, so I know it. All of that life is entails. Like I know experiencing Japanese baseball firsthand. It's an experience. Like it's a big deal, and I know it was one of the few things televised at the beginning of the pandemic was you get to watch like Japanese baseball, and it's a really cool experience. So like to still stick with hockey and speaks a lot to your love of the game, and then it kind of pays you back in like that bond and something that you can like experience with your mom. Like I really, really love that aspect of everything. And for your first experience as Adam Foote to be the captain, that's that's definitely a big deal because everybody absolutely loves Footer. But like what was it about the Avs in particular that made you like because you talked about going to Ducks and Kings games and what about the Avs? Is it just
I
that being the hockey origins
Yeah, I
or
think hockey origins. Like, I mean, I've grown up. So my dad's from Seattle, so like we're super excited for Kraken. Like,
Mm.
but he's an Avs fan. Like he'll say like he is an Avs fan first and foremost. But I grew up in a household that was always like Rockies, Broncos, not big basketball fans. So like if I'm gonna cheer for a team, it's gonna be the Nuggets just because it's my hometown team. And then on like the flip side from my dad's, I was always like kind of split with like Seahawks and then Mariners. So like I always
Mhm.
got a taste of both. And then I think it was just like as I got older and kind of enjoyed like the pace of hockey more. Like I grew up playing lacrosse, so it kind of is a comparative sport to that, like
Mhm.
pace wise. So I think that was part of it. And then like some of it, I think my mom and I also talk like we've done a lot of baseball. Like I don't dislike baseball anymore, but I think we just got so worn out on it. Just with the years in Japan and then like when you're in the South, that's kind of also the thing to do. So when they were in the South for a while, we were going to a lot of, minor league baseball, hitting off some of the bigger stadiums that we hadn't done down there. And so I think once we finally like got back here and settled in, it was kind of just a reminder of like, oh, we really like this sport. And it
Yeah.
was just that like a side of it of being like, wow, I've missed like having it at my fingertips or like having it in reach. And I mean, we did go like we went up to Pred games from like the South, which like back then, this was like a few years ago when they made it to, deep in the playoffs. So the environment's totally different. Different team, different group of people. Um, so it was really like that was also kind of our first like taste back into hockey as well, which like if you're in enemy territory there, like you get quite the experience, but even just like
Mm.
back then it was such a fun like it's kind of a bummer. Like I've heard a lot of people say it's not the same anymore, which is a bummer because it was a really cool environment that they built up. So I think that was part of it was just like getting worn off on like too much baseball. I think kind of the same happened with like football, considering we had like multiple Super Bowl runs going on for, both of these teams that both sides of the family were cheering for. So I think once we kind of got back to hockey, it was like the concept that it was fresh in the
Yeah.
sense of like we hadn't had it kind of drilled at us over and over again. But then also just like a reminder of the pace and like how much we enjoyed like that fast rush environment.
Yeah, and that used to be my sales pitch when I lived back in Alabama, was like $20, you get in, and it's very cold. It's not
Yeah.
like a college football game where you're sweating.
Yeah.
And
Oh no, we did a lot of that too, where we were all like, why are we here? Like
yeah,
this is not fun. So but that's and then I think like abs again, it's just the connection. Like I think some like military kids understand the idea of like being born a place, but then like people look at you because you grew up everywhere else that you're not
yeah,
actually from there. And so like sports teams in Colorado were always kind of my connection back to Colorado to be like, no, I'm from Colorado. My mom is from here. Like my grandparents are here. My uncles are here. Like so much extended families here. And so like people would be like, well, you're not a native. And I'm like, yes, I am. Like my birth certificate says Colorado. Like, these are the teams I'm choosing to cheer for. And then, when we lived in DC, we just kind of naturally became like fans of the hometown team because that's where we were. But if like the Avs or Rockies were in town, we were in, burgundy and blue or purple and black. Like we weren't,
yeah,
um, picking and choosing there. It was a very clear, like, this is who we're here for. And same out in like LA, I would go to Ducks and Kings games if like tickets were cheap. But if the ads were in town, like I was going and I was
yeah.
getting good seats, making sure I had seats I liked. Um, so that was kind of never a question of like picking it up later on. It was just kind of more of like a tie back home and to always feel like connected back here.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest things. I cannot stand gatekeeping fans. Like, you show up to an arena in like an opposing jersey, and you're like, "Why are you a fan?" Or even like, if you're on the same side, you're trying to out fan the other. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, we're
it
all on the same
never
side
does.
here. But and that it's a good year to be an Avs fan, and this was an incredible year for you, especially with everything around Nazem Kadri, the one of the greats. Like,
Yeah,
honestly, I was a fan of his back in Toronto. Like, he is one of those that I've always loved his game, and I just always liked that little bit of an edge he played for. Granted, like in his time in Toronto, he played on the other side of the edge, and he let it get to him. But when he came to Colorado, he cleaned that up. What made you fall in love with Nas?
So I think a lot of people that followed me like always knew like Zadorov was kind of my guy to start. Um, and like we were really excited when Nas came, but like that was like kind of my last like season with Z when that like kind of transition happened. And so we were super excited, like, for Nas, just like looking at his, like you kind of said, that he has that edge and it can go both ways sometimes, but it's that, like, that edge can be such an X factor. And I think we were just kind of excited to see this, like, splash of someone else in the lineup that could potentially bring some spark. And so once, like, Z left, which, like, everyone knows I did not handle, like, well at all. Like, I literally remember seeing, like, the whole thing go down, and I was at, like, my boyfriend's birthday party in California, and I, like, went off to the corner and I was, like, crying. And his whole family knows, like, she loves her hockey, like, that's her boy. And I was like, I just needed a moment, like, I knew it was coming, but I needed the moment. Um, and I think I kind of had that, like, season between, with everything that happened with COVID too. Like, I just kind of, like, didn't pick anyone.
Hmm.
And then it was like I kind of saw, like, an uptick in, like, their cats, like, Instagram, when everyone was home, and, like, we have cats. And so I was just like, I really enjoy that, like, you're a hockey player, that, like, stereotypically most hockey players have dogs. And, like, that
Dogs,
is,
yeah.
like, their, like, cliche personality trait is, like, look at my dog, and my dog has an Instagram. And then you're over here and you're like, nah, I'm gonna have a cat. And so it just, like, kind of, like, fits so much his personality of, like, this guy that's kind of, like you said, like, the playing on the edge, but always wants to kind of be a little different.
Yeah.
That I was like, you just went and got a cat to be different, like, to set yourself apart. And so that was kind of, like, what started, like, I really enjoyed it. So I, like, threw Jazzy on the back of his, like, big head because I thought it was really funny. And I was like, I just really enjoy, like, Jazzy. And I think I told him that at one point. I was like, I really just enjoy your cat, like, a lot. Um, and then, like, um, when the St. Louis, hit happened, and kind of some of the stuff had come out of, comments they were getting. At the time, like, I didn't obviously realize that I was talking to, like, his wife, Ashley, through the cat's account, and just kind of sharing, like, that I had spent some time in Turkey. And so it was really, like, upsetting to see, like, these remarks, and, like, to have experienced a side of Islamic culture that isn't maybe, like, what most more westernized version, I guess you could say. But to kind of share that with her, and to share that, like, I have a really interesting appreciation of the culture. Like, I've gotten to experience it, I've gotten to understand it a little bit more, and it just, like, kind of blew my mind that people could still say these things.
Yeah.
Not to say that, like, I don't believe that racism doesn't exist or anything like this, but it's just more of, like, when you see those comments come out against any player, it's just, like, so mind-boggling that, like, that's something people can say.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had shared some of it, like, on Twitter, to kind of just be like, this isn't acceptable. Like, even if he's playing with the edge in a negative way, like, this still isn't how someone should be treated, or comments should be sent to, a cat's Instagram account that his wife manages.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, like, there was a really cool connection there, like, from something so negative, that I think she, like, got to see a really interesting fan's perspective that she may not get to see all that often. And then kind of from there, it was just like, I think I had my, like, mourning period, and I was like, all right, like, I could pick someone new. Um, and I was just like, you know what, like, um, Naz, I think, is that guy. Like, I think there's times where, like, um, it became a little bit more about, like, understanding the connection I think I had with, like, his wife at times, and, like, how she's supported my art, that, like, seeing the person behind him made me even like him more as a player. Because, again, like, stereotypes with that as well, like, seeing someone who's really authentic in their own way is really neat as well. So that was part of it. And then at the time, I had started dating my boyfriend, who's, like, a huge diehard Kobe fan, from LA, big Lakers guy. And so kind of, like, getting to learn more about, like, Mamba mentality, and then, like, understanding how deeply that's tied with kind of Naz, and, like, his play style, and, like, someone he idolized growing up. It just became, like, a really, like, full circle thing where, like, it was someone that my boyfriend was like, I really like him, like, as a player. And my boyfriend's not really a hockey guy. So he was like for him to sit back and be like, this guy's like got some swag to him, like it's pretty cool. And like I think he like made a joke about like wanting his jersey, and I bought it, and then I just like kept it for myself in the end. I was like, no, it's not yours, it's mine. So I think that's like part of it. And then just over the season, like kind of getting to interact with him a little bit more. He is just a really like cool guy. I think the player tribune piece really like showcased who he was, who he is, who he wants to be. And I think when you read something like that, it's really easy to like understand why people like him so much. Even with like the bad, you're getting so much good. And like um again, getting to like meet Ashley, his wife, get to know her more, meet their daughter. Like you can just see like for him, like he wants to grow so much as a person and like be a better hockey player because of those two and like his family. And it's just, I think that was part of it, was just seeing like a little bit behind the scenes that maybe some people don't get to see, that really was like, this guy's pretty special. And I think he has that like X factor to him.
Yeah, and you were also like you touched on a lot of really good parts of the timeline there with Nas, and like before we get to all that, like everybody knows what other show I do with the Avalanche. Before we get into Nas, I have to know, why Big Z?
Um, so it's really cute. One of the first playoff hockey games my mom and I went to when we were back was that Nashville series.
Ah, okay.
And it was his birthday, and I had just like made him a really small sign that said like happy birthday. Like it was nothing really special. And he threw me a puck, and it was like packed. That's, if you went to any of those games, like it was packed in there. And like it was like not just him throwing a puck and like skating away, but it was like him throwing a puck and like making sure it got to me.
Yeah,
And like taking the extra second to sit there and be like, no, this is hers. Like he watched like every,
yeah.
grabby hand around me. And so that was kind of special. And then I think like one of the first signs I made for him of whatever capacity, like whatever idiot thing I did, he just got such like a good laugh out of it that I was just like, okay, like I can do this. I can keep
Yeah.
doing this. And that's kind of what it became over time, was just like a really funny joke of like, can I stump him? Like, does he get it? Does he not? And then, like I started making fun of like Kamenev in the signs on top of it, which like even made it even funnier. And then like when Nichushkin came, like I added him into the fold. So it was like kind of funny when like the three Russians were there, of like the fun different um like signs I could come up with. And that was just like a huge part of like all of it.
That's and that's Big Z was he was very polarizing. There were Z fans and there were Z detractors. And it's funny. I went to the Avs Devils game in March and I was there ridiculously early. And there was one guy there in an Avalanche jersey, and it was Curtis McDermott. And I was blown away. Like I was meeting Chris with Locked On Avalanche. I was meeting him there, and like Chris cannot stand McDermott. So like I was like, dude, can I take your picture? And it was the same thing. He's like, I made him a picture and it like he noticed it. And like that moment for that guy locked in his fandom where he's probably running a McDermott fan account. Who knows? But like
Probably.
those little moments matter, and it's funny, like, I get to hear the same thing with Big Z, and then I got to experience that with McDermott, so that was funny, but, I just wanted to hear why Big Z, but, like, most importantly, Nas. You had all that experience with the first St. Louis series, and then we had 2022. You also were behind Make Vegas Nasty. That was big, and that paid off, and I think that was one of those big moments for Nas, where he could see for everything he encountered in Toronto when it came to like the fans and like the team, for not just like the the fans to get behind the hashtag, but like the team starting to run with it a little bit. And then like when he scored that goal that, like, the broadcast is starting to get into it. Like, how did that was that when you're like, "Wow, okay, this is starting to get some legs," and, like, maybe I'm starting to, like, channel some, "Hey, maybe this guy is not what you perceive."
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have to give all credit to my mom because like I was trying to come up with a hashtag. Every hashtag was horrible, and then she was like, "You're an idiot. Like here it is." And I was like, "Wow, I way too like the super obvious hashtag." And I was like, "Wow, I feel really dumb now." But and it was just kind of like I think yeah, the momentum of it was like super cool, and it was something that like again, my mom, she'll say things, not realize if she says them, I like take it as a challenge. So she kind of made a joke of like, if you get Naz into the All-Star game, like we'll go. And I was like, is that like on the record? And she was like, yeah. And again, like talking with Ashley, like for him to be at that point to be even considered for it was something, so new to them. And like, it's just funny because like she was asking me, she's like, okay, well, how does this work? And how does this work? And I was like, well, this is like how it normally works. And so when like they announced, he got last man in, um, I think she at that point was like, oh, he's not going to make it because,
Mm,
last man in, it's fan vote, this or that. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Like,
yeah,
he's making it in. Like, trust me. Like, there's enough people that were upset that his numbers didn't qualify him in to begin with because of, the personality. And I was like, I took that like really personally just because I
yeah.
think like in the past, it was the same thing. Like when we voted him in, like he
Mhm.
should have been in.
Yeah,
Um, and it was kind of like a no brainer thing. And so I think it kind of helped that like as Faithful already had that experience of being like gypped and being like, we're
yeah,
not going to let another person get gypped. And I think it just took them like the push of like, here's a hashtag, here's this. And then, I know a few people from Av's social media. So when I put it out there, they were just like, can we take it? And I was like, take it. Like,
yeah,
um, you know, don't do twice the work. Like, let's just do, one group of work. Um, and yeah, I mean, even like when Mosier, like that Mosier call is still in
yeah,
my head. Like it's one of the ones I think of, and I just kind of smile thinking about it because it was such like I feel like it was kind of that turning point for like Naz himself, just to be like, yeah, I can be, that like I go back to the Player Tribune article a lot. I think when I think about who he is as a person, because it explains so much. But like him to talk about like wanting the puck on his stick. And I think there's when you look at like everyone says that, I want to make
yeah,
the last save or I want to make the last shot or I want to make the, last goal, whatever sport this is, last pass, last bucket, anything. You always that's like everyone wants that, but then to actually be the person to do it is a little bit kind of different. And I think when that OT, goal happened, that was Nash showing that like I'm not just saying it, I'm gonna do it. And
yep,
um, Toronto's not an easy place to play. Everyone knows. It's big spotlight, high risk, high reward. It's not the best fan base, but in the sense they're the most probably passionate fan base. And I think like for him, it was getting out of it. It took a little bit, I think, to kind of break or shed some of that. I think he still loves it there. I mean, I know he's a big Raptors fan, so it's
yeah,
not like he, isn't a Toronto boy at heart. And then I think it also just took like some of it. I think you saw this season really well too. Was Bed's kind of understanding some more of Naz and like
yeah,
understanding I don't want to say like how to control him because I don't think that's the correct term, but I think there are certain athletes that need to be coached a certain way. And it took, I think, Beds just a little bit longer to crack Naz. And once he figured it out, I think that's what helped a lot of the thriving and kind of keeping his head on because he was a punching bag for a lot
yeah,
of the season. And, he took it and he took it. And there were times you could, feel it like, is it going to break? Is he going to, go over the edge? And then you would kind of see like the guiding hand of Beds come back in and go, nope, we're not going to do that.
yeah,
Just keep going and doing what you're doing. And I think as it went on, I think you saw like Naz no longer not as much need the guiding hand, and kind of being like, yeah, I I can understand a presence or a role I can be.
Yeah, like I remember sitting right over here when he went into the All-Star game as last man in and like sobbing because like everything that you mentioned, like I've witnessed that. Like I've been such a huge fan and like to watch like I know what you could do here. Like and just to see him finally starting to push through and like I remember when that hashtag was going around. I remember I and we'll get to this like at the end of the episode, but like your Etsy store, that's where I first encountered you. And I remember I got some stuff from you before, and then to see you were the one that was behind the hashtag, I was like, hey, that's what's up. We got more people on my side. And like and then for it to culminate in like St. Louis part two, that um uh, you want to talk about as mad as I possibly could get at a fan base. Um, and like you mentioned, like I, there's just no place in it. Like I'm wearing my HDA stuff now. Like I don't play with it. I don't play with it at all. And it really. I remember after that game, we were getting ready to record a Lockdown Avalanche, and I told Chris, I was like, just a minute. I need a minute because like it's one of those that you're going to stoop to their level and start firing off, and I will not. So it's like, just give me a minute. And like for the s- the movement that happened afterwards, tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was kind of in the same mindset of you. Kind of like adding to it. One of the really like cool parts again, like with this season was like watching games at home if I wasn't at, a game and it was an away game. Like usually Ashley and I were just messaging back and forth. So
Yeah.
like both of us kind of reacted to the play the same way. And then like the minute kind of the domino effect like started rolling in, um, you know, I kind of got hints from her like it was gonna get ugly. Um, and I was just like, ugh, I can't do this again. I think was kind of my feeling. Um, and I'm not Jordan Bennington's number one fan, far from. I play goalie, but I could
Oh,
probably say that's you know bottom five goalies.
yeah.
I think I joked with someone like I don't think you could pay me to spend the day with him. And so like just to see the whole kind of water bottle toss thing play out and just be like, wow, like how like that part of me would just went like, how juvenile can you be? Like you've tried to punch this guy multiple times throughout the season. Like you've made comments that are just borderline unprofessional, not appropriate for your position as a professional athlete. Um, so seeing that played out, I think I had the same reactions of you of just like, God, I could hurt someone. And I
Yeah.
like had to take, I took some time, talked like kind of a little bit with Ashley too, just like, hey, like, let me know if you need anything. Like, not sure what I can really, provide to you besides just saying, like, I hope you guys are safe. I hope everything's okay. And then I kind of had a few people just like reach out. And I think I already knew like my sign for game 4 um, was going to be special, or game 5 was going to be special. Like, I already knew in my head, like, I knew where I was going with it. I knew my vision. Um, and then, like, to see him play game 4 and just be, like EJ said, like that villain role that he can like thrive on. I was just like, you know what, like he deserves a little bit of a hero's like welcome back.
Yep.
And so, the few people that kind of reached out, like knowing, hey, you did make Vegas nasty, like what more can you do? And it was just, kind of one of those things that it didn't dawn on me until a little bit later on, but like the first tweet from St. Louis won, where he got the suspension, and I shared some stuff. Like I had put the hashtag stand with Naz,
Hmm.
not even realizing like at the time how much bigger that would be almost a year later. And it just felt like the right hashtag. It felt like the right thing to say, right thing to put out there. Um, I was like, whatever, I can print some copies, get some extra ones, but I kind of put it like in Avs faithful's hands to be like, what's your guys' plan? And my mom and I talked about it like leading up to the game of like it could be everything or it could be nothing. And I think like that's when you really saw how much like Naz endeared himself to this fan base was like when it was everything.
Yeah.
um like it still makes me pretty emotional like thinking about it, reflecting on it. We like I told Ashley because she hadn't arrived yet, and I was like, hey, like it's a lot. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I'm warning you now, like it's a lot. And like she was across from us in the family section. And like there was one point you saw her like wiping tears and she was just like, I don't get emotional very often. And that was. And yeah, I don't know. Like it was just something that like it felt right to do.
Hmm.
It felt really easy to do. Like I know that sounds kind of crazy. Um, and like kind of silly to say like the easy thing to do is to like tell people to stop being, a-holes and racist. Like, yeah, of course that's the easy thing to do. And then, it's just like really cool that I think a lot of people, outlets picked up on it to realize like we can actually shed light, not just on Naz's story, but like, across like HDA and like across a lot of stuff that players in this league who are not white, like the issues they face.
And ironically enough, like when I went into this, I was even thinking like I made signs with my kids, and like it opened discussions with them, and like it was a huge moment, and like and it's funny like how you were talking about like your gatekeeping fans and feeling like Colorado's home. Like both you and Nas got to experience Colorado really embracing honestly the efforts of both of you in the 2022 season. Like your hashtag is becoming part of like Nas's return home after he had every reason in the world to go out there and goon it up and go right back to the Toronto days and start putting fist to face. And he goes out and gets a hat trick. Like, and for that welcome home and for it to be something that you had a hand in and like influencing like how not just you are going to respond, but the Avs as a fan base are going to respond to this moment. We're not sinking down to St. Louis levels. We are welcoming our hero home. And you got to lead him all the way to the cup. Like something that the Avalanche haven't seen in 21 years, that many members of this team have not seen at all, including our boy. What was it like to see the cup be lifted?
Um, Again, like really emotional. Like again, it's like a like my mom needs to stop saying things and like not expecting like me to, figure out a way to make it happen. Um, and like I've told some people about it. People have heard it. Like I had a dream round one against the Preds that we won in 6 in Tampa. My
Mm.
parents looked at me like I was insane because this is when everyone thought Tampa, you're done. Toronto's
Yeah.
fine. You, the curse is lifted. Mighty Toronto is finally, we saw how that went. And then,
Mhm.
my mom's like, okay, now they have to play the Panthers. Like, I think, this could be tough. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't think that's gonna be tough. No offense to the Panthers. They needed that moment. I do think they return a strong team.
Mhm.
And then, we actually saw a really competitive Eastern Conference final that, again, people
Yeah.
thought maybe the Rangers can do it. And I think everyone in As faithful can say, after the Stanley Cup final, game 5, where there was such this buzz and electricity throughout the whole city that everyone was just, you could tell like everyone was on not like edge in a bad way, but just this like giddiness, this excitement. The fan base was there. It's Friday night in Denver. Like it just felt like, okay, this is perfect. And the crushing like blow, not in a bad loss necessarily, but just like the high that everyone had in the city. My mom, I looked at her and I was like, I told you it
Yeah.
was gonna be 6 in Tampa and we were there. Like I already told you this. So like what do you want to do?
It's
What
not
would
on
you
me. I gave you
Yeah.
advance warning.
I was like, I already told you what was gonna happen. Like, not that I didn't want them not to win at home, but it was kind of just like part of me on the flip side was like, I already felt like I knew where it was
Yeah.
going. And um she was like, you get the game tickets, I'll figure out the rest. It was a crazy, wild travel day for anyone that, followed along on Twitter of just like flight delays, getting into Orlando at this ridiculous time, adopting Jake from Saskatchewan, this like lone Avs fan that was on the flight with us. I think we were the only like Avs fans on this flight. So I think the pilot like thought we were crazy, like when we were explaining like what we were doing. All this stuff. Like we finally get there. We finally get to Tampa. And like that whole game, like I think everyone felt it, nerves, that energy. But it was just kind of like it felt like, okay, we're here. This was the dream. Like it can't go wrong. And like I think the last 5 minutes, like I think my mom and I just looked at each other and we're like, okay, there's 5 minutes left. Like, but I think it's there. Like I think the two
Yeah.
of us, like, it started to like kick in every period of just like crap, like I was right, like this whole, stupid time I was right. And then, just to see like to be there for it, I think was like the cherry on top of just like the whole story with Naz, like my, bond with like the family, like to actually see that and like witness it in person. Like Ashley knew we were there, like the photo I have on the ice, on the glass with Naz, like that was Ashley being like, no, Naz, turn around, like I'm gonna take the photo. So it was like a really sweet, like, this just perfect like way to end, a story of um them embracing me as an artist, getting to do a lot of projects for them, not just the shirts. Like I did their Christmas tree ornament for the auction, which was really fun. Um, getting to do a lot of the art for like the Vegas campaign kind of on my own, and both of them like loving it, validating it. It was kind of like that perfect thing of like, I validated you as a hockey player that I knew could do this. In turn, you validated me as an artist and a fan. And now like we kind of have this like memory that we are tied together with.
Yeah, and as me, like a spectator, I have never like honestly until we had this conversation, we really have never talked, and I have never talked to Nas or Ashley. But like watching this whole thing like from afar, like watching like, wow, NHL's talking to Guffy Chan and like sharing an article, and like their story is like her story is everywhere now. It was like so many wonderful things in the season. Like, I was just so happy for you every time. I was, like, sharing the literal crap out of it. I was like, "This is what this just makes me happy." And it's so cool to see. And we're almost done. We're about to wrap up. I kept you longer than I told you,
All
but,
good.
like, I want you to also share not only how people can find you, if you haven't yet, what in the world are you doing? Find your socials and your Etsy store because my laptop is littered with it. Like you do incredible work. Like you are
Thank
just a
you.
quality individual, and I've been so happy, like standing from afar to see all of this play out for you, the cup, for the Cadres, like everybody. It's just what a wonderful story. And like I wanted you to come on here and like share this story. Like this is just, I mean, this is as wonderful it is as it is, and also support the HDA as well. Um, don't be like St. Louis fans.
No.
Like
And I
be
will
better.
like I will give some of them credit. Like I was really impressed with like there were people within that fan base that like were like disowning that sect of
Yeah,
their fan base, which was like really amazing to see. Like I saw several like St. Louis fans post like stand with Naz signs or
yeah,
bring them like to game 6, which was like really cool to see that like at the end of the day, we're all hockey fans and we all want the world to be a better place. And like for those things to coexist, you have to like call out the negative in your fan base. And we saw like that's all I did when, round 1 of St. Louis happened, where it really wasn't St. Louis fans attacking Naz, like it was people in the Avs community
yeah,
attacking him.
yeah.
And like that's and like what you said, like you had a conversation with your kids. Like I heard so many cool stories of like parents talking about that, or people, talking to family members, friends. Like it sparks such a conversation that like those are the stories that like when I look back at it, I think of like that aspect of it, of just like the way that instead of it being okay, like this girl did this and it was cool for this hockey player, it's like the flip side for me of like I inspired some conversations that maybe aren't easy to have. Maybe people's minds were changed, maybe they weren't. But either way, there was conversations had at the end of the day. And if a hashtag can do that, then like think about us actually like stepping away from Twitter and just having those conversations instead.
And, like, I absolutely agree with you. Like, we had on the Locked On Avalanche side, we had, like, Blues fans coming out and say, "Hey, by the way, we have nothing to do with that." And, like, I don't just, like, rewind it a bit, I don't want to be in a fan base that has to exclude, "I'm not part of this fan base." Like, don't divide anything. Humanity, fan bases, quit dividing is my number one thing. And the conversation aspect that you mentioned, you have made it to where I don't for lack of a better term, you have made it cool to have those conversations to where I think maybe in round 1, where Avs fans kind of fell into this, where you kinda laugh and go with it or laugh and say nothing. It's you can call it out for what it is. Say, "Hey, this ain't right, and this has no place here. Can we just not?" And then
Yeah.
call it out for what it is. And like that's what like the HDA is and like your hashtags, like that's what it stands for. And it makes it okay to say, you know what? No, let's not. Let's not go here with this. Like we can make fun of the team, but let's not go to the that like this level. So
Yeah.
I appreciate all of what you have done for that and like opening it up where I can have conversations with my kids and say, hey, you know what? It's not cool, and this is why we're supporting him because people are not cool to somebody that's really, really cool.
Exactly.
And before we wrap this up, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done, everything that you are, and especially coming on here and sharing your story. And for everyone listening to here in Puckberg, how can they follow you?
So it is at Guffy Chan, which is GuffyChan, on Twitter, Instagram, horribly on TikTok. TikTok is not my thing, but I am like attempting it. I get like my boyfriend just hating on my TikTok, which is like makes it even more enjoyable because I have no clue what I'm doing. And then my store is on Etsy. It's Murder on Ice Design Co. But it's like in all of my social bios to find it fairly easily. And there's hopefully lots of goodies somewhere. UPS has them somewhere. They're on their way. But there should be lots of fun stuff coming to kind of cap off the season.
Well, by the time this episode drops, maybe we have a home for our boy and UPS wakes up.
And I mean, I'm optimistic. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like the longer it goes, I think the more he wants to stay. And I think the key piece to Naz is that he wants to be a competitor, a contender, and not many teams that could pay him big fall into that category.
I am absolutely of the same mindset. Everyone that has reached out to me asking, "Hey, do you know anything?" I just say, "Keep an eye because I think the phones are ringing, but they're going somewhere else. Things are about to shift."
I
So,
agree. So we're all just on Naz watch.
but I would like to thank you so much for coming on. And also, just if this is your first time listening here in Puckberg, you can also follow our show at HPuckberg on Twitter, here _in_ Puckberg on Instagram. You can find new episodes every Saturday morning because, 90s Saturday cartoons. It's a theme. You can follow us on YouTube. Every episode will be in your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts every Saturday morning. So I'd like to thank you so much again. I will probably never stop thanking you, but thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for everything. And we will see everyone again real soon here in Puckberg.